We've been talking about the doctrine of election, and it came up the issue of foreknowledge and foreordination. So we have two questions in that field. Since God foreordained everything that has happened and will happen, and nothing happens without him allowing it to happen, did he foreordain Satan and the fall?
The Westminster Confession, I believe it's chapter 3, says that God, from all eternity, immutably, doth ordain whatsoever comes to pass, semicolon. And after the semicolon, it says, but not in such a way as to do away with secondary causes or violating the will of man, and so on. And echoing what Augustine said centuries before, is that God ordains everything that comes to pass in a certain sense. And you have to use that qualifier carefully, in a certain sense. But if it's true that God ordains everything that comes to pass, then it's true that God ordained Satan's creation. He ordains even my sin that I commit, because that's part of everything that comes to pass. Now, so that doesn't mean, however, that God is the author of evil. But he is the author of everything that comes to pass, again, in the secondary sense, at least. And so I say to people, evil is evil. Satan is Satan. And it's improper to call good evil or evil good. But even though evil is evil and Satan is Satan, it's good that there is evil, and it's good that there is Satan, because as Luther says, it's God's devil that has to deal with the devil. We're not a eternal dualism, but rather God is sovereign over all of these things, and he brings all of these things out of his eternal purposes to bring everything together for good, for his ultimate purposes. So I don't think we should shrink from acknowledging that if God is sovereign, then it has to be that in a certain sense he ordains whatsoever comes to pass. A simple way to look at it is this: God knows before I sin that I'm going to sin. We all understand that. Now, God also has the power to vaporize me before I commit that sin, right? And when you talk about God's permitting it, you know, that's a weak answer, really, because he does more than permit it. But at
he just might get vaporized.
At the very least, God chooses to let me do it rather than not to let me do it. So insofar as God, who is capable of stopping me from doing something, chooses not to stop me from doing it, in a certain sense, he ordains that I do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it. That's simple, isn't it? Simple.
Simple.
Right? You get it?
Yes, sir. I did not get it.
I think the other end of it is that he doesn't stop us from doing it because it serves his ultimate glory to allow us to do it. Otherwise, how could he put on display all those attributes of his nature that are related to how he deals with sinners? Justice, wrath, judgment, mercy, grace, compassion, forgiveness. Without sin, none of that is on display. God is fully glorified when he fully displays all of his attributes, which necessitates the reality of evil in the world so that that can also be put on display for his own glory. So what if God allows vessels of wrath? Are we going to question that? Because therein he displays his glory. I would venture to say that when you come to praise the Lord and you come to worship, you might worship him for his omniscience, omnipotence, omnipresence. You might worship him for his immutability. You might worship him for his creative power. But my guess is that that which elicits the most profound worship out of your heart are all those attributes of God put on display in your salvation, which is a result of your sin. And that's what we're going to be doing all forever in heaven. As we look at Revelation chapter 5, we hear everyone saying, "Worthy is the Lamb that was slain." That will be the ringing worship of heaven surrounding the salvation of God, which was brought into being because God didn't stop sinners from sinning.
Thank you.